Yeah, thank you for having me. Just here to provide a very brief update on what Fresh Care is, what Fresh Care can provide to fresh produce producers, and how we've also aligned with recognition as part of the primary production and processing standards. So, Fresh Care, if you have heard of us, it was launched in the year 2000. It was to provide assurance for fresh produce right from that growing on-farm phase through the supply chain, ensuring that the food that's being produced by growers is handled, packed, and distributed in a safe manner. So Fresh Care has grown from those early days to now providing certification to over 4,000 businesses. Sorry, I've just jumped slides there. This is the governance structure of Fresh Care. We operate as a not-for-profit, for-purpose industry benefit organisation, which means we operate under the structure of an independent board of directors, our CEO, and we have 12, I guess, full-time equivalent staff that report through and manage the day-to-day operations for Fresh Care as a certification program owner. We're a registered charity through the ACNC, which means our financials and all of those are publicly disclosed. We have member organisations which are the voters for the annual processes that Fresh Care undertakes. We also have core committees, which are formal committees of the board, as well as our external engagements, including things like our benchmarking to the Global Food Safety Initiative, recognition through Sustainable Wine Growing Australia for some of our sustainability standards. So mentioning the member organisations of Fresh Care, of which obviously Berries Australia is one. Our member orgs provide a conduit for us to, provide information or representation of their members. We update our standards and resources based on feedback from those member organisations and the participants within those programs, ensuring that I guess our standards remain fit for purpose. They're reflective of requirements within the Australian context of growing. So when I refer to our standards, we actually have a suite of 5 standards or operating programs that are available in the market. There's 2 food safety and quality standards, so one specifically for on-farm growing and packing, and one for supply chain, so everything post-harvest for the handling of whole fresh produce, so things like wholesaling or distribution centres and things like that would be covered under the supply chain standard. We also have an environmental standard for on-farm use, as well as 2 sustainability standards, one for the Australian wine industry and one for the viticulture process. So just focusing on our food safety and quality standard, or you'll hear it referred to as FSQ 4.2, it provides a full farm management food safety system. It's broken up into 2 elements. If you've ever looked at the standard, they're freely downloadable from our website. The core components are obviously the management section and then the food safety and quality components. As part of the primary production and processing standard release, we have actually mapped the Fresh Care food safety standard elements against those requirements, and that enabled us to receive the endorsement of our scheme being recognised as meeting those requirements. So if you're interested, or if you're certified to Fresh Care, there's 4 steps, I guess, to get involved in that process. There's a sign up, you register, That way we can give you the information you need in regards to the standard you're interested in. There's a training component that supports the implementation and knowledge building from a program perspective, what's required of you, record keeping guidance and things like that. Then to ensure obviously that implementation has been successful, there's an assessment through the audit component. That's undertaken via third parties which are independent of FreshCare. And then once that process is complete, the endorsement or certification is issued. Ongoing maintenance and management and renewal of certification from a food safety perspective occurs once annually during your harvest cycle. And so referring to that third party certification, FreshCare doesn't undertake the audits of our standards. We have certification bodies which are through agreement endorsed, independent, approved and accredited to undertake those activities. The auditors are then employed or contracted by those certification bodies to come out and perform those audits or assessments to our standards and rules. Auditors are all qualified, required to have industry experience, knowledge of production practices and food safety and quality aspects on farm right through the supply chain. And then obviously with the new primary production and processing standards that have been released, it has been endorsed that they're recognising GFSI benchmark schemes, of which 2 of the FreshCare standards are recognised or benchmarked through that GFSI benchmarking process, so the food safety and quality programs for on-farm and supply chain. And that's obviously we're focused here on Victoria, so just the growing side is a requirement within Victoria. There are other states that are requiring the supply chain recognition as well. And so if you are a Victorian grower, we have been working closely with AgVic to enable a simple opt-in data sharing arrangement. So that is now available on the FreshCare members area. Once you log in, if you are a participant within that region, there's a consent box that comes up. There's a terms of agreement which you can read through, which provides details of what that data sharing arrangement is and what would be included. So you get an example of that. And then if you consent, you just click on the, consent here. And it's as simple as that. That process then links that information back to the AgVic Connect registration. And so that was it from me. If you've got any questions or would like to contact us, I'm hoping I was screen sharing. And I'm happy to take questions at the end. Thanks, Sandy.
Yeah, you were screen sharing.
Okay.
You're all good.
I'm sure you would have stopped me if I wasn't.
I would have, don't worry. All right, well, thank you very much, Angela. And as Angela said, we're gonna allow for questions at the end. We'll have everyone run through and then do a little Q&A at the end. I can already see we've got a question, so excellent. Next, I'm going to pass off to the team from AgVic. So this is Emily Scott and Shane Herbertson. They are part of the implementation team, and they're going to talk a little bit about what exactly the standards entail and what they expect when people apply for them. So Shane and Emily, everyone.
Thanks very much, Sandy. Hi everyone, my name's Emily Scott and I'm the Engagement Officer for the new standards here at Agriculture Victoria. So the new food safety standards have been brought in just 12th of February is when they took effect here in Victoria and are regulated in Victoria by Agriculture Victoria. So the standards are designed to lift food safety standards across the industry, and they apply to all dairy businesses, regardless of size, that grow or complete primary or early stage processing. So as you can see from the table, early stage processing includes washing, trimming, sorting, sanitizing, and storing. And there's a few other activities that don't come under the standards, but ultimately, whatever the size business you have, under a hectare, over 100 hectares, if you are growing and selling berries, then these standards apply to you. So if we take a look at the next slide, you'll see the cost structure, something I'm sure everyone is very keen to know. These fees are based on your production area. A business's production area is the area of land under production or intended for production of the selected crops for the next year. Sorry about that. Yeah, so here we've got the fees associated with the new standards. So berries have a requirement to notify, which means their fees are actually the smallest and their registration requirements are the simplest. So that's really great for you guys. The fees there are based on 5 categories, from less than or equal to 1 hectare to over 100 hectares. And those fees there for the first 2 years, so for 2025 and 2026, there's a 50% fee discount. So halve all those numbers for what you're going to have to pay this year. So that's really great. For the registration process, you'll have to log into Agriculture Victoria Connect, which is our online system, to complete your food safety registration. The system, when you first go in there, you will have to do a couple of steps that once completed, you won't have to repeat. And that's just creating your account, creating a profile, adding your business and managing your business roles. So we've created some YouTube videos and I will put the link to those in the chat as well, where you can go and watch a step-by-step guide on how to complete those processes. As Angela mentioned, if you do have FreshCare, you need to go onto your FreshCare website and just provide consent to allow data sharing with Agriculture Victoria. I do recommend you do that one day and then come and do the registration on Agriculture Victoria the next day, as there is just a little bit of a delay in that data sharing process. So just so you don't get frustrated, do one, go away, come back, do the next one. As I mentioned, there's a 50% discount and that will have been already applied in the total shown to you on the summary and payment sections. Your registration is valid for 12 months from the approval date, and as renewal date approaches, we will send you a reminder, so don't stress, you will get reminders. I've put the link for the Agriculture Victoria website in the chat. We keep that updated as regularly as possible. All this information is there, along with links to lots of other useful resources, so I do recommend you go and take a look at that. I'll hand it over to Shane now, who'll step you through a bit of the Agriculture Victoria Connect process.
Great, thanks Emily. I'm just going to stop sharing this screen and switch to another, so it won't be too long. Now I'm hoping everyone can see our AgVic Connect landing page. Let's confirm. Yes, a few nods. That's great.
Yep.
Now, so I'm just going to show a demo here of what you will see and do when you come to register as a berry producer. So I'm assuming, or this demo is assuming that you've set up your profile and business details already. Hence this screen here is once you've logged in. The demo will be if you're a producer not in a global food safety initiative such as FreshCare. So it's what we would call a berry notification. And as Angela and Emily have both mentioned, the FreshCare registration is much more streamlined. Once you agree to share data, it's pretty seamless. It's just a few clicks once you're in. So when you first land, you'll click this Horticulture Food Safety Registration Apply button. Because we're on limited time today, I've actually made an application. So I'm going to go up here under my applications and go to my draft berry notification here. There's there are 6 screens once you enter as a producer not in a GFSI. Some questions are pretty short, some are a bit longer. And as I said, I've pre-populated some sample answers, and I'll go through at a pace where I hope you can see most things, but I'm conscious I don't want to take up too much time of our 1 hour to allow time for questions at the end. There's a few areas where we've had some questions and we've had to ask some questions of our applicants, so I'm going to pause on those areas just for a bit of extra discussion, I suppose. So here's our first page here. My information is summarised, as well as who I'm submitting the application on behalf of. It's a berry application. My area of land is 5 hectares, and I'm not registering a business as part of a Global Food Safety Initiative. So I'll go forward and click continue. As I said, I've pre-populated this one. So the activities that I do, I grow and harvest and I transport. I don't do anything for other businesses. I'm supplying to small retailers and farmers markets. Our system has some little help or question mark text that you can hover over to get a bit more of an idea of what we're asking, what we mean. So you'll see those reveal. And the first question's about traceability. So pretty important for horticulture crops. So we're asking how you do traceability. So for this example, I'm saying that my business has a combination of physical and digital records. So that means I might record some paper-based things or an Excel spreadsheet, but also have some barcoding or something similar. So we have had a few people say that they don't have traceability records in some of our early registrations. We've had to go back to them and say it is actually a requirement of the standard to have traceability. And as I said, look, there's many ways to achieve that, and you know, the start point, and you'll hear some great resources from Susanna next, but the start point is, you know, to divide your paddock up into blocks and have ways you can identify those blocks and label the product as such so that it can be tracked back to where it was grown and the date it was harvested, those types of things. Next area is skills and knowledge. So we asked some questions around how do I ensure that your workers have appropriate skills and knowledge. And as you'll see, most of our questions, actually I think all questions in a berry notification are multiple choice. So I'm in my business, my fictional business, I do on-job training, and I have some operating procedures available and provided. And really that's referring to food safety. So that might just be as simple as instructions on how I clean areas that handle or touch the produce, or that you know, I provide training or other, I guess, documented procedures on an annual basis or something like that. Next bit's about health and hygiene of personnel and visitors, and that's about, so the question, how do you ensure that you minimise contamination of your crops by workers and visitors? Again, multiple choice. There's some quite simple options there, and I think they're relatively self-explanatory. You know, it might just be that you have quite simple procedures to encourage people to do basic things like wash their hands, have procedures if people need first aid, have some sort of procedure if people state that they're sick or are starting to begin to feel sick, that, you know, they don't touch the produce on that day, those types of things. We do hope that some of the multiple choice will perhaps prompt people to think a bit more deeply about some of these things and perhaps implement a few things as they go along. The next question is about sale or supply of unacceptable crops. We have had some people misinterpret this, and we think it's the way our question's worded, so we're going to put a bit of work into rewording this one. Some have interpreted this as people returning product once it's been sold, but this question's about how you manage crops that are damaged in the field. So For example, if blood water has touched them or something, you know, what do you do? Do you dispose of them? Do you still make them into some sort of processed food like a jam or something like that? So as I said, we're looking to amend this question to make it a bit more clear. Next question is about a recall procedure. We just want to know yes or no if you've got one. And again, we have had to go back to some people to say it's a good idea to have a recall procedure, and there's resources on the FSANZ website to help you document that. Click continue down the bottom. The next is we ask you to identify the addresses where you're growing the produce and what you grow at that address. So at my address here, I'm growing blueberries and strawberries. There's a button down here to add all your different addresses if you grow across multiple sites. That's all for that screen. So I'll click continue. Next bit's about inputs. So soil amendments, fertilizers and composts. I'm stating here that I purchase from suppliers, and I also only purchase from suppliers that provide me with a certificate of analysis or produce their product considering the relevant Australian standard. Again, another short screen, so I'll click continue. Next is about water sources. So for my one growing site, I use some bore water, some town water, and some surface water as well. So I've ticked 3 options here. Again, there's another little tooltip there that states what we mean by a waterway or water scheme. Something that's also important and is to do some micro testing, particularly on sources that might be riskier, and generally surface water is a bit more risky because things can run off into there. And then we go through and identify where each of our water sources are used. So in my example, I'm using my bore water for irrigation. I'm not aware that there's any hazards that impact the use of bore water, so I'm ticking not applicable there. I'm using town water to clean my contact surfaces and for hand washing and for post-harvest wash. And I'm not aware that there's any hazards with the domestic water supply, which is generally the case. And for surface water, again, I'm using some of that for irrigation. I've got some intensive livestock next door in this example, so I've ticked that my water flows near a livestock area. And I do some things to control the hazard. And I've just put in some free text here to state what I'm doing. So I'll read that out. I use the water for irrigation only. I manage the surface water runoff from the paddocks with livestock by having a vegetated buffer zone and specific drainage. And to monitor this, I conduct an annual microbiological test of the water. That's to ensure its suitability. And none of these other hazards are relevant, so I'm just leaving them all unchecked. That's it for my inputs. A little bit about premises and equipment. So I'll go through these. So again, whatever's not relevant, you can use not applicable. So I don't have produce bins in the field, so it's not applicable. I do use some handheld harvest tools and I clean them with a rinse and detergent. So I check that button. I don't have any other harvest tools, so not applicable. The tools that I use to apply any soil amendments and fertilisers, I have a rinse and detergent clean for those. Equipment associated with the use of ag chemicals, rinse only. Equipment associated with water, rinse only. Transport vehicles, 2-step cleaning. Equipment in the packing shed. So because my equipment there touches the product, I do more than 2 steps, so I do have a sanitisation step as well. And I do have some sanitisation cleaning procedures, which could be just as simple as having a list of the products I use and making sure everyone knows what the ratios are that they need to be mixed. And also because I've got different water sources, it might be stating that I only use town water for the higher risk activities. and I cover the packing shed and production sheds by those procedures. So evidence kept around this activity. I do have some checklists, and I've got posters that show diagrams and pictures in the workplace of how to do the various tasks. That's all for that screen, so I'll click continue. We're almost to the end. We just ask here if anyone's been or has a conviction under the Food Act in Victoria within the last 10 years. So I don't. So I'm clicking continue there. And now I'm at the final review screen where I'll have the opportunity to review all my answers, so I can expand out the various elements, and they'll show me what my answers were. If I want to change something, I can use these back buttons down the bottom. I won't expand the rest out. I'm asked again to confirm that my production hectares are 5, so I don't want to change that, so I'll click no. There's a few things here I need to declare, which I'll run through, and then I'll continue through to the end screen, which will give me my figure there that I need to pay. And then once I click to proceed to payment, a payment option with credit card will display. That's essentially the full process there. I mean, I've done it quite a few times, but that, I suppose, took me 10 to 15 minutes. But, you know, for my fictional farm, I'll acknowledge. I'll stop sharing now and just move back to the slides. I do have a few slides with a bit of info about some of those areas that I focused on. So just so they'll display in the recording, I will just display these for a few seconds each rather than read them all out. Okay, I think Emily's going to take over again now to tell us about some statistics of what we've got so far.
Thanks very much, Shane. So that was just an example of how a farm may go about filling in the system. It's not necessarily how all of you will fill it in specific to your farming systems and what works for you. As you can see, so far we've had 22 berry registrations, with the quickest being 11 minutes. So kudos to whoever took 11 minutes, but most people are taking around half an hour. So it's not too bad, it's not too arduous to complete. I know there's a couple of questions around the business's production area. So it's a production area of land under production or intended for production in the next year. So if there is land that you will put into production during the year's time, that needs to be included in your hectares. So massive thank you to everyone who has already registered. We really appreciate it. We understand that it's still a busy time in your season, so it might have not made it to the top of the priority list, but we do hope you get to it soon. One more thing, just some useful resources. I've already put a couple in the chat, but I do encourage you to go and visit the Agriculture Victoria website. We also have a food safety newsletter, and I'll put in the chat the link to sign up for that if you'd like to. I do recommend that. We're keeping going now that the standards have launched. We're still sending out those newsletters and putting additional information. I think the last one we covered water sources, and the next one we're looking at traceability, just to give you further information and resources to help with those things. We've also developed a couple of fact sheets that Sandy has copies of and she can send around, or reach out to me. Do recommend having a chat with Sandy if you have questions. If you don't feel like reaching out to Agriculture Victoria, she can answer your questions or put you in touch with us, or ask us the questions for you, whatever you're most comfortable with. The food safety email address will go directly to both Shane and myself, and we are happy to answer any questions. There's also the Biosecurity Services Centre phone number that you can call, and they will help answer your questions. So we hope that's helped and given you a few more information about what's coming, but please reach out if you do have questions. We're here to help. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Emily and Shane. Appreciate it. And the resources that Emily referenced are in the Berries Australia Library as well. So we'll get some of those questions answered. So our last presenter of the day is Susanna Rolas. She is a representative from the Fresh Produce Safety Center. And she's just going to be going through some of the best practices for berry growers and where to find more information on it through the Fresh Produce Safety Center. So thank you, Susanna. Take it away.
Thank you very much, Sandy, and hopefully everybody can see my screen. Yep, I'm getting a nod from Shane. Awesome. All right, thanks so much, and really thank you for the opportunity as well to share some information with you today. So if you're not familiar with who we are, so the Fresh Produce Safety Centre, we're a not-for-profit organisation. We were formed about 10 years ago, and we're all about collaboration and providing free resources and information to industry across Australia and New Zealand to help improve food safety practices in horticulture. We also host a number of food safety events. So if you do pop on our website, just keep an eye on any events, some of them for free, some of them paid. And we're also leading a horticulture food safety initiative. It's a Hort Innovation Frontiers project. It spans 3 years, and we're currently on phase 4, which is about outreach and education. So part of this project was really focusing on melons, berries, and the leafy veg where the PPP standards apply. So we're currently in that phase of the project, and today's workshop being one of them. So just sharing information around where can you get guidance for food safety and practices. The other big outcome of this project is that we've created or built a community of practice. We have 85 members across Australia and New Zealand, and they span the whole of the fresh produce supply chain. If you're interested to join us, we meet every 2 months and we talk about all things food safety as well. So if you go onto our website, we've got a range of resources. The Bible, so to speak, of fresh produce food safety is about 120-page documents. 19 sections, but covers everything from growing all the way to retail sale. And it really is a best practice guidance document that is based on scientific evidence. So it is trusted, and it is currently under review. So if you use our guidelines, we'd also appreciate any feedback on that as well. If you're looking for a bit of a simpler form of that, we have some fact sheets which are really food safety topic focused. And we also recently, together with New South Wales DPIRD, we published the Food Safety Grower Guides, which are 13 very simple and illustrated guidelines around what to do for best practice food safety. And we've also had them translated into 5 other languages as well. So if you haven't seen any of our resources, please feel free to scan that QR code. Sandy will distribute the presentation, so you'll be able to just scan or click on our website directly. The other thing we started last year was a help desk. So it's knowing where to take some questions. So we're aware that there's other help desks out there, but we wanted to try provide a free resource, a free opportunity for any small to medium-sized businesses, particularly not on a food safety scheme, where obviously Fresh Care have their own help desk and other standards, possibly English second language, or just small technical resource that needs to ask questions. So if you're one of those, please feel free to reach out for our help desk for free guidance. It's either through email, through mobile, or through the online chat as well. So why is food safety so important? I think as consumers, when you buy food, whether it be in retail, whether it be through a market or any other source, we really do assume, I suppose, that our food is safe. And unfortunately, we still have 4.1 million food safety cases a year in Australia. So it just really shows you the importance of getting food safety right, because if something goes wrong, it can be absolutely catastrophic and even result in death in some instances. So the seriousness of food safety is really important, and that's why we're saying let's be proactive around food safety. Let's put all the preventative measures in place to make sure that we can reduce that number or be part of reducing that number as a fresh produce sector. I wanted to share some recent results. So if you're familiar with the Food Standards Australia New Zealand website, they publish a 4-year document on recalls that come out. And unfortunately, fruit, vegetables, and herbs were still sitting at the on the leaderboard, an unwanted leaderboard, but number 4 in terms of contributing to some of the recalls that have happened over the last 4 years. I must say, however, though, in the last report, we were sitting at number 2, so we're absolutely improving as a sector, but it's still to make sure that we prevent all recalls as far as we can. To add some detail to these recalls, a lot of them have been related to enoki mushrooms and sprouts, also being high-risk commodities. And also we have had some previous examples of melons and leafy veg as well. So the guidelines that we have, as I mentioned, that big document in terms of reference, we cover off all the food safety hazards that are likely to occur with fresh produce, so microbial, chemical, and physical. And we also talk our way through the production controls that you can put in place to prevent those risks from ending up in your product. We look at risk assessment and also how to prevent them from coming from external sources such as your inputs, but also through your environment, your facilities, your equipment, and your people. And last point of the guideline is to look at verification. So it's also making sure that whatever protective measures you put in place for your product, you actually do test and monitor as well to make sure that they are actually working. As mentioned, the FSANZ food safety site, if you go on there, this is where you can actually find a copy of the PPP standards, and they've also developed some useful resources, which I'll be going through in a worked example shortly. So I won't repeat too much, but the new standards came into effect on the 12th of February in 2025. A few states are still working their way through the implementation plan, but very fortunate that AgVic are very well in that journey. And really, really great to see the work that they've been doing behind the scenes, not only on their portal and registration, but also their interaction with FreshCare for mutual recognition pathways. So if you are a primary producer or you're a primary processor and you undertake any of those activities that are listed, so washing, trimming, some of them may not apply to berries, but this is across melons and leafy veg as well, trimming, sorting, sanitizing, storing, combining, packing, or transporting, then this standard does apply to you. So if you're doing any of those activities, you need to be having a look at the standard. It doesn't apply, however, to retail or manufacturing of harvested berries. So which berries are covered? I think typically we always look at strawberries and blueberries, and then of course our blackberries and raspberries. But FSANZ have also come out with other varietals that are included, including boysenberry, silverberry, youngberry, and loganberry. Sorry, looking at my screen there. The standard itself has 6 elements. So we've got traceability, the inputs, premise and equipment, skills and knowledge, health and hygiene, and sale and supply of unacceptable berries. So working through Shane's example there was really, really good to show how each of those registration forms actually link back to the requirements of the standard. So it's a really good, if you're not on a food safety scheme, it's a really good opportunity, as Shane said, to kind of tick off some of those things and think about some of the actions that you may need to do. If you're also a grower of leafy veg or melons, you may have noticed already that there are less requirements for berries than there are for those other 2 commodities. So if you are growing those other commodities, please be aware that there are other elements to the standard that needs to be covered. However, they don't apply to berries, only those 6 elements that I've mentioned. There is, however, also a requirement for berries to notify the authorities of their business name and the fact that they're actually packing or processing, producing or processing berries as well. So we thought today it might be worthwhile looking at an example of an element of the standard. So the one that I picked, funnily enough, was traceability, Shane, that you went into. So a really good example here of where you can have a look at the standards, see what is actually outlined in the standard, and then where you can find information. So FSANZ, for example, has got guidance, and ourselves. So we're more, obviously the standard says what you need to do. We're about the how. So how can you actually, quite simply put it in place and practice as well. So if we have a look at traceability as an example, if you look in the top left corner of my screen, that's all that's required under the PPP standard. So if you look at it on the face of it, it's quite simple. It's saying that you need to know where the berries were grown, so an understanding of the traceability of your growing site, to who the berries will be supplied to and from whom you actually receive them through. So there's that one step forward, one step back, and also knowing where the berries were actually grown. However, when you put that into practice, although that seems like 3 bullet points and quite easy to do, what we've tried to do here is show you the information behind that, so how you can easily implement those 3 bullets as well. So on the FSANZ website, they've put together some what they're calling info bites. So every element of the standard, they've created a 1 or 2 page document which outlines the standard requirement, but also the intention. So what are they actually, you know, why have they asked us to have traceability in place, for example, for the berries? And it's all about knowing where our product is, where our product's going to, where our product's from. So in the event of a food safety incident, we can very quickly and rapidly identify the product that will potentially put people or public health at risk. So that's what traceability is about, but it's also providing confidence to the consumer that we've got these systems in place as well. So we can look through the info bite that's on the left-hand side, and then they've also created something called the Safe Australia Horticulture Guidebook, which gives us, again, best practice, but also gives us some worked examples. So you may relate to business X, for example. You grow berries, you pack them into retail-ready packs on farm, you label them up, and then you distribute them, in which case you only need the traceability of where your berries have been grown from yourselves. You also need product traceability and then who you sell them to. In the second example here, business Y, it talks about multi-site businesses. So like Shane had on the registration form, if you have multi-sites, you would have multiple addresses, but you need to be able to demonstrate that you have full traceability back to the individual multi-sites as well. So not only to the block, but to the multi-sites. And then business Z, the third example they give is if, for example, you're actually receiving berries in and you're packing them on behalf of growers, then you need traceability back to each of those suppliers. They in turn need to provide you with traceability back to the growing site, and you need to keep records of who you sell that product to. So depending on whether your business X, Y, and Z, that gives you some really clear examples around the traceability that you're expected to have. So where do Fresh Produce Safety Centre come in? We have our Bible, so to speak, in our Fresh Produce website. And if you look at section 17 of our guidelines, it talks us through what traceability is, why it's so important, but it also talks about how you can look to create lots or batches. So it gives you some really clear examples around, is it just the area that it's grown? Is it grown in an area where you've used different chemicals, for example, on different blocks? Is it all the same water supply? Is it different varieties? Is it different, sites that you're growing on? So you can start narrowing down what is the smallest window of traceability. So in the event that you do have a food safety issue, you can ring fence the lesser amount of product, if that makes sense. So we're really trying to make sure that as a business, you have the most narrowest amount of product would be impacted by the recall. But again, that you have the confidence that the product that you're recalling, if you were in that instance, was safely managed through traceability. Another example I wanted to share is in New Zealand. They had a case it's going back to 2002, so it's quite a while ago, but they had a case of a worker that was picking the berries that was actually infected with hepatitis A. And something we do in our guidelines is think about, do you have traceability of your pickers and your picking gangs or your groups? So in the event that one of them does come and say they've got a communicable disease, you're also able to trace back to the product that they've actually handled. So we give guidance to think about the whole traceability system. So not just product and records, but also thinking about worst case scenario, are you able to trace back to certain inputs? And the last thing that our guidance talks about, and it actually does come up in the FSANZ guidance as well, is have you conducted a mock test? Have you conducted a trace back? And this is so that you can test whether your traceability systems actually effectively work. If all that's too much for you, please feel free to then use our grower guides. That's a one-pager, really get the basics right on traceability, and it's also translated as well. It's illustrated, so it's pretty easy to use. So if you've gone through the FSANZ information, you've gone through our guidelines, you've gone through the grower guides, and you still have a question that can't be asked through all of that, that's where our help desk comes in. So you can make contact with us. You can also contact the likes of FreshCare if you're certified. as well as your regulatory authority as well. So there's opportunities for you to contact somebody if you have a question. I'm conscious of time to make sure that we've got some for Q&A. So these slides will be sent through, and I think, Shane, you've actually done a really terrific job through your registration, because many of the best practice guidance for the other sections are actually captured in your registration form. So that's really good. So I'll flick through some of these, but I will distribute them, and it gives you best practice around how do you prevent your soil, your fertilizer and water, for example, from contaminating your product. We look at making sure that your premise equipment and your facilities are not only designed well, but they're also maintained and that they're easily cleanable. So we give you some best practice around that. And then the last two sections really look at the skills and knowledge, not only of your staff, but also of your visitors on site with regards to health and hygiene as well. So really making sure that anybody that is in close proximity to your product, if they're working for you, that they are trained, they are skilled, and if they are touching product, that they have acknowledged some form of health declaration, then free from, you know, any contamination, and they're following your rules, whether that's hand washing or your protective clothing as well. So what can you do? If you are on a GFSI certified scheme, which is likely to be recognised by most states, but obviously AgVic have already announced that they are accepting of GFSI, including fresh care, then the majority of the requirements, as Angela mentioned, have been already benchmarked and they're covered. So you don't need to do too much more. However, I'd still encourage you to go have a look at the standards, see if you've got any gaps, and then really making sure that you're keeping records of the things that you're doing anyway. Make sure you've got training records, regularly review your risks, and stay informed. So come to workshops, come to webinars, contact us through help desks. There's a lot of people out there that are willing and wanting to help you to make this as easy as possible as well. So I'll leave it there, and then hopefully we've got some time for Q&A. Sandy?
Yeah, thank you so much.